Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, over 25 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel and follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with a wonderful gentleman from beautiful downtown Los Angeles. He's a neurosurgeon. He's also an author of 3 books, and he does it from the eyes of a doctor. He also tells things in poems, and he also works with number of patients, and he's attended Brown, Stanford, Harvard universities, also attended University of California, one of the most rigorous and most competitive schools, and passed with flying colors. He was also attended the David Geffen School of Medicine, went to University of Mexico for neurosurgery. I mean, this guy is just a fascinating resume, and basically his main goal is to break the stigma of doctors being rigid, book smart people lacking creativity and artistic. And of course, he's got 3 books out called The Young Neurosurgeon, From the Eyes of a Doctor, and My Surgical Cases Told in Poems. And live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plush Studios in beautiful downtown Los Angeles, LA neurosurgeon and author, the very, very creative Dr. Paul Kaloostian. Dr. Paul, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Mike. Pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan of yours.
Oh, well, thank you. And big fan of yours after reading these books. So you got 3 books out called The Young Neurosurgeon, Lesson from My Patients, From the Eyes of a Doctor, and My Surgical Cases Told in Poems. And basically you attended Brown, Stanford, and Harvard universities. You also attended University of California, David Geffen School of Medicine, and University of Mexico for neurosurgery. You got practice in Pasadena, California. And I'd love to hear more about your books. And before we get into all that, tell us how you first got started, Dr. Paul.
I'll take you way back in history. I grew up with a family of physicians, so you can expect how that dinner table conversation went on a nightly basis. So, you know, and they were great doctors, and they're still practicing. And but you can imagine we really didn't have much other interests. So we were really focused on math and science, and as well as English. And you know, so eventually we just got into the science field and focused on that. And in college, I really took a nice course at Brown University called the Introduction to Neuroscience. That was really my first peek into the field of neuroscience. You know, what is neuroscience? It's a big word, fancy word, but what is it? You know, and that professor who actually wrote the book that we used for the class really altered my trajectory in many different senses. I mean, he really portrayed the nervous system in such a fantastic and beautiful way. For example, each of our nerves are called neurons, and our brains and spinal cords are full of these unique neurons that each are so specialized. Each neuron does such a unique thing, and it's just amazing how we're made, and how, you know, for example, the hippocampus of the brain has a neuron that's really useful for memory, versus the motor cortex of the brain has a neuron or cell that's useful for movement, and how each of these cells are made of different structures that help that cell work and help us to move and think and talk and speak and do all these things that we often take for granted. It's just such a beautiful thing to really learn about it on a molecular level. And, you know, I was always a procedure-oriented person. I love building things. I love putting things together. And, you know, I think neuroscience plus being a procedure-oriented person led me into the field of neurosurgery. I read a book in high school called Death Be Not Proud by John Gunther. I recommend your audience to really read that book. It's a very passionate book about a son and a father. And the son, unfortunately, was in his early teens and had a brain tumor. And it was a very aggressive brain tumor, one of the worst you can have. We call it a glioblastoma. Senator McCain had it, and Kennedy and others. it's a lot of smart people are doing some good research on it right now, but we don't have a cure for it. I've operated on many patients with it, and anyway, that book details the struggles between the father and the son, about the father taking the son to all these prestigious universities, New York, West Coast, East Coast, around the world, trying to find an answer here. And they go through a lot of different treatments. Unfortunately, the son passes away at the age of 17 or so. But it's a really passionate, in-depth look at the field of neurosurgery, the highs and the lows. And it's very true. I mean, being in this business for almost 17 years now, there's a lot of highs and a lot of lows, and I guess that's what makes up life. And but I recommend that book, and it's a really inspiring book. As I progressed on and got into research, I've been publishing a lot and trying to advance this field and writing a lot. And with these books, I really wanted to take your audience behind those doors. You often see it says no admittance. You cannot go through here. You have to stop. What happens behind those doors? That's kind of really what I wanted to show people in layman's terms, so people understand what goes on, what we doctors do. It's not what's on Grey's Anatomy. It's different.
Mm-hmm. And what inspired you to become a brain surgeon?
Once again, learning about the nervous system and having the privilege and the honor, really, of entering into someone's brain or spinal cord or in their nerves throughout their body, and really identifying pathology and removing bad pathology or decompressing areas that are compressed and mitigating pain, helping people. These people, my patients, they're in their greatest time of need, as you may imagine, and they really have nowhere else to go. And it's just been really a honor to be able to really learn about the brain and the spine, to interact with my patients and help a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you pretty much had years experience and everything else. What's the more common ones that you've done that are quick, and what's like the most challenging that you're able to come through? So just from the eyes of a surgeon, the more common ones ranging up the most difficult that you ever encountered, and you succeeded.
That's true. And some of the more straightforward ones are, let's say, like carpal tunnel syndrome, where you operate on someone's wrist and you release the nerve that's being compressed because it's causing pain in their hand. That's a very common pathology. A lot of the compressions of the nerves in the neck and the low back. People often use the word sciatica. You've probably heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have leg pain and arm pain, and it's really affecting their quality of life. They've worked a hard life. They've been lifting, bending, twisting, construction workers, people that pick up trash, plumbers. These people, they work hard and they hurt themselves, and those are some of the more straightforward procedures. And those really, involve just, going into that area and unroofing the compression, really drilling off bone that's compressing or that's arthritic, that's compressing those nerves. And people get very good relief, very, very good relief, about 99% success rate with those. Some of the more complicated ones, as you can imagine, are there. And I talk about a few of them in my book, The Young Neurosurgeon, Lessons from My Patients, just because these stories are just so inspiring to me. For example, I always talk about, and because I can't stop thinking about, this younger Hispanic man in his 30s who really influenced me. He had a very bad tumor. It's a vascular tumor called the cavernoma. It's a kind of a circular mulberry-like tumor. So it's literally full of mulberries. But unfortunately, this poor lad had this lesion in the worst area you can have it in your brain. It's called the brain stem. That's an area that controls your breathing and your heart rate and all of those things that we obviously need. And it's kind of like, how are you going to take that out? I mean, and it bled already once, and it's at high risk of bleeding again. And if it bleeds again, it's not good. He probably won't make it. Uh, and now, what are we going to do? It's like going into battle, and there's mines all over the ground. I mean, every step is so critical, is so valuable. That area of the brainstem is prime real estate. I mean, every millimeter of that area is critical. And any millimeter of injury can cause devastating harm. So how do you get that out? So obviously, we use navigation guidance, which is a unique form of robotics almost, where you are kind of using a video screen to guide you to the appropriate area so that you go straight into where that tumor is and avoid all the other critical structures. So we use that to go in and find that one little tiny area where, really has been presented to us as an opening, as a door, as a window, I guess, into getting in there safely. So we went in there under the microscope, and you kind of go around and suction out the mulberries and try and avoid injury to this poor patient. And and I must say before that, I always counsel patients. I always tell them, look, there's risks here. This is the prime real estate. You're at risk of really hurting yourself. And so I always like to really be up and forward and honest there and let them know what's going on so that they're aware of it. And I answer all their questions and really kind of just sit down and just talk to them and really show them, look, I'm here. We're going to do this. You're going to be fine, but there's risks. And anyway, we did that, and he did well afterwards. He had some expected weakness, which recovered over a couple months of therapy. But he was very thankful. He's very thankful that I spoke to him. I answered all of his questions, that I was there for him. And I think that's important. Communication is, I would say, about 50% of it, honestly. And in this world, obviously, we all know there's a lot of lack of communication going on, and a lot of wars, a lot of fighting. I think communication can help. So I think those are some of the stories I found really interesting. They're all in my book, The Young Neurosurgeon Lessons from My Patients.
Okay. And you also did some work as well, too, like with Alzheimer's and peripheral nerve surgery. You talked a little bit about that, pain treatment, and what about dementia and stem cell treatments, and also like with migraines and cluster headaches. And I was just curious about, especially the cluster headaches that just clog in, especially getting near the medulla oblongata. So maybe you can just, tell us about some of those.
Yeah, no, Mike, that's a great point you bring up. And there's a lot of good research going on in terms of the headache world and Alzheimer's world. A lot of smart people out there doing good work. In terms of headaches, there's no real correlation with kind of the medulla in any real way. Really, headaches are a interesting phenomenon, and you know what? We all get them, and there's so many different causes. I could be here all night telling you how many causes of headaches there are. Most commonly, we get tension headaches, which is really from overuse of our neck muscles at the back of our neck. And that causes headaches going all the way to the back of our scalp, also to the back of the eye. So it's very common. So you guys should all look out for that type of a headache. That's a tension headache, most common. It goes away. You just need to kind of have some way to relax those muscles and take some anti-inflammatories, and it'll eventually go away on its own. Cluster headaches are a little different, as are migraine headaches. And each of these can present in so many unique ways. People with cluster headaches, they really know when they're going to get headaches. Usually it's around a certain time of the year, and they know it's coming on. Medical treatments for pain and anti-inflammatories are really the best way to treat those. There's some other meds out there as well, but there's no real cure for those. People will get them, like I said, around the same time of the year usually, and they are debilitating. You can get some tearing of the eye on one side. So all that could happen. Migraine headaches, I see that all the time in my patients. They can present in so many different ways. You could, typically migraine patients, they know they're getting a headache, 15 minutes before it comes on. They feel an aura. It's called an aura, spelled A-U-R-A. They know their headache's coming on, so they can take special medicines before that headache comes on. It's called abortive medication, so you can prevent that from happening. And some patients with migraines can even get weakness on one part of the body. They can present with numbness on one part of the body. There's so many different presentations. Headaches are very complex, believe it or not. So it's important to really have a good diagnosis, Mike.
Mm-hmm. And very important as well too. And how much of an increase are you seeing in patients right now in terms of pandemic? Is it like a lot more expected, the same, not as much? It's like, how much of an increase have you seen in patients during the pandemic?
Yeah, no, that's the big question nowadays. Well, I do a lot of trauma surgery and trauma call coverage for hospitals. So honestly, I've I've seen about the same amount of patients. People are always getting into car accidents and falling, unfortunately, and I'm there to help them. But actually, let me tell you this story, Mike. I think you'll find this one interesting, and I think your audience will too. I had a patient a couple weeks ago, young guy. He's a respiratory therapist, so he treats people with pulmonary problems in the hospital. And as you can imagine, we have a big COVID, unit. So we have a lot of COVID patients, unfortunately, even now on ventilators. And so anyway, his roommate heard a thump. And so his roommate ran upstairs, found this poor guy on the ground in the bathroom unconscious. Had some vomit on the floor there as well. They brought him to the ER immediately. I saw him. He eventually got a breathing tube put in. And we scanned his chest, and his chest was full of, infiltrates, liquid all over the lungs, both sides. Very classic COVID. And he was positive. And we scanned his head, and he had some bleeding in his head too. So that's why they called me as the neurosurgeon, because when he fell, he hit his head, and he was left unconscious because of that fall. Kind of a unique story. You never really hear it that way, where someone falls because of COVID, because he couldn't breathe. So he's very, we call it hypoxic, where you're not able to breathe, and he collapsed, and not only has COVID, but he has a head injury now. So really interesting case. So I'm following him for that. So really fascinating what's going on out there.
Mm-hmm. And we'll also talk about some of the schools you went to, including David Geffen School of Medicine, and your books as well, too. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition way. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/the Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, over 25 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel, and follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with LA neurosurgeon Dr. Paul Kaloostian, and author of The Young Neurosurgeon, From the Eyes of a Doctor and My Surgical Cases Told in Poems, here on the Mike Wagner Show. You went to a lot of prestigious universities, attended Brown, Stanford, Harvard, University of California, and the David Geffen School of Medicine, and the University of New Mexico for Neurosurgery. You can tell us about those wonderful experiences, including the David Geffen School of Medicine. And little do we know that you think of him as a music guy, but also School of Medicine.
It's really been a great, fascinating journey, honestly. And I've had the opportunity to really go around the country. I've been to Johns Hopkins as well, where I did my neurosurgical fellowship training as well. And it's just a great opportunity to really see how different surgeons, different doctors treat patients, how they operate in such unique and different ways, to really better the patient outcome, better the patient's lifestyle. And I was like a sponge, and I still am, going to different places, different hospitals, just soaking in what I can get out of different mentors, different institutions. And I recommend that to all your audience members interested in medicine and surgery and nursing, respiratory care, all of that. travel. I highly recommend that. Go to different places, see how people do things in different parts of the country. We have such a beautiful country out here, and really take advantage of that. But, obviously, all these different institutions, including UCLA Medical School, were just awesome. I mean, I can't really use any other words other than awesome. Hopkins, Johns Hopkins leads medicine in every category and everything you can imagine. And I got to work with some of the biggest names out there. I'm still friends with them. We talk quite often. I published multiple articles with them. I've written books with them and book chapters. Oh, it's been great. I mean, I highly recommend going to all these different places and really learning. And you also learn about the culture in different states, which is really fascinating to me as well as someone interested in traveling.
That's interesting. You mentioned about the different cultures in different states. And what was your favorite state that you're in?
Ooh, Mike, that's a good one.
I'm taking in this culture right now. I feel like a sponge taking in culture. Go here, go there, and everything. And if you tell me, maybe I can decide what's best. So.
Let me say it this way. I think, Mike, you'll like Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Santa Fe and Taos, New Mexico. Oh. I would highly recommend you and your audience to get into the state of New Mexico. People think, oh, there's nothing to do there. Why would I step foot there? But you know what? Coming from me, I'll tell you, I thought the same things, but I went there and lived there. I lived there for 6 years. And I mean, you're going to see some of the kindest people. And I mean, don't get me wrong, you're going to see a lot of trauma. So I saw a lot of trauma surgery out there, gunshot wounds, all of that. But that's, that's in certain areas. But I mean, I'm talking about the nicer areas. You guys are going to see such beautiful culture. For example, you know how many Native American tribes are out there living, in New Mexico? They have so many reservations out there.
Wow.
Oh, just, and I treated so many Native American patients. They're very nice people, very, very good people. And, I mean, in the pathology, for example, out on the reservations, I don't know if you guys know this, but, they don't have much out there. I mean, it's pretty much land, which they hold sacred, obviously, and we respect that. But really not much else, honestly. It's just the family, and that's it. And, so when someone comes in, they come in with a bad problem. They don't come in with when one leg is paralyzed. They come in with both legs being paralyzed, or they come in not with one eye blind, but both eyes blind from a brain tumor. And this is how it is, and so I really saw a lot of pathology just because of the patient population, that just such poor population out there, and just lack of hospitals near the reservation. So we got all these patients coming in, and we helped them. And but such a beautiful state, such a beautiful culture out there. That the cuisine, the Hispanic and Spanish and Native American cuisine. Oh, come on!
Oh, you're making me hungry.
It's it's really a sight to behold. And then you go up north to Santa Fe and Taos, where there's great skiing and snowboarding, great bed and breakfasts out there, and you guys will love it. Trust me.
Definitely am. And in fact, I'm gonna make a call right now to make some reservations. So I know I'm being put on hold, and I'm doing that right now. That is just amazing. Young Neurosurgeon and author Dr. Paul Kaloostian here on Mike Wagner Show. And who's your favorite mentor that you studied under, and who would you say would be your biggest influence?
Gosh, I've had so many.
Or say the one that really stands out to you.
Yeah, someone that was really influential in my life was Dr. David Sklar. He was actually the vice chancellor or the dean and designated institutional officer at the University of New Mexico, where I did my residency training. And he was such a great leader, accomplished so much, wrote books, wrote policies, but despite being super busy, he had time to sit down and speak to me, talk to me often. And you know what? He really motivated me and, made me become a leader, someone wanting to make change. We wrote 1 or 2 articles together. He wrote a foreword for my textbook, the Young Neurosurgeon, Lessons from My Patients. we all need that motivating factor in our lives. Life is tough, as we all know, day-to-day struggles we all go through. But having that motivation, having someone who can really give you ambition, give you, through their own work, showing their perseverance, their determination, what you can accomplish in changing institutions, changing the state, changing the nation. It was really inspiring to me. And I've had many other mentors as well in the field of neurosurgery, and my parents are in the field of medicine. They're great mentors to me as well. But I think Dr. Sklar really helped to really give me that future vision. And I think, Mike, I think we all need that, and it's very valuable. And I've been trying to do that with my students and mentees.
That is amazing as well, too, and what he's done for you. You've got a great career, and we'll talk about your books in just a minute. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Looking for a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/the Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, along with Amazon, Audible, and more. Take the Mike Wagner Show on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel, and follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with LA neurosurgeon and author Paul Kaloostian here on the Mike Wagner Show. And let's talk about your books, The Young Neurosurgeon, Lessons from My Patients from the Eyes of a Doctor, and My Surgical Cases Told in Poems. And, tell us how you got started with those books and what got you inspired to write.
Yeah, well, going through this field of medicine and neurosurgery, you could imagine, the cases that come through the doors. These are not patients just with a cough and a sore throat. These are, quite complex cases, and I've written about some of them, and I'm writing currently about others. But, I think writing is a passion of mine. I think a catharsis in many senses of the term, because it really clears my mind a lot. And I think through clearing your mind through the act of writing and thinking, it helps you become a more calm and relaxed and better individual. I think that's important for all of us. If you don't have a method of catharsis, I think in this world, at least, I don't think you can really be healthy and be able to really, be the best doctor and best person you can be. So I think having that ability to have a catharsis through writing is just really a fascination of mine. And I've done so much reading in my life, and in high school, I did that advanced placement English courses, and I really was fascinated by what I was taught during that particular year, in terms of reading poetry or reading these books by Maya Angelou, and My Name is Aram by William Saroyan, and others, John Gunther, and many other poets as well. Looking at all of these lines or even words and analyzing these lines and words, they often don't mean what you think they mean. There's often a meaning behind the way that sentence was written, or why that word was chosen versus another word, and really correlating that with the entire poem or the entire book was really fascinating to me. There's meaning behind the obvious. And so for me, that's what I've tried to do in my books and my poems, is to kind of write in the way where you have to think about every sentence you read when you read my stuff. You have to think about it. There's some meaning behind it. There's a meaning for the reason I wrote that sentence or that word. And I like that. I think it's it makes things a little bit cooler, you know, and a little bit more fun for people. And you know, other reasons I write are because, you know, I want people to know doctors are not just this formula-based people. You know, we're not just, you know, people that do algorithms and are precision-oriented. You know, I think we can do a lot more. You know, I think we can do a lot more in this world. We can be creative. We can be entrepreneurial. We can contribute to other issues other than medicine. And you know, I've been able to stand on the shoulders of others who have come before me, like Dr. Bernie Siegel. You may or may not have heard of him, but he's written a lot in the field of faith and healing. Is a giant in the field, and as well as many others who have written about faith and healing and all of that kind of thing. So, you know, it shows you that, look, doctors can do other things, and we can make a difference. And I think, you know, doctors should step up, and we should contribute to you know, affairs nationally and globally. I think we can do that, and you know, we'll see what's in store for me with that. But we have some good things coming up. But you know, I think that's important. And finally, communication. You know, you know, we often see that in this business, you know, unfortunately, medicine is a broken system, Mike. You know, people don't understand that, or maybe they don't realize it 100%. But being in this system, realize how broken it is, and we need to fix it. We need people to step up and write and talk and speak, because otherwise these problems will continue. Will continue, Mike. And the only people that will get hurt from this are our patients, which could be you or me or our parents or our kids. So we all need to step up and write and contribute our thoughts to make a difference. And you know, you hear about all these medical errors being made. Someone got, you know, 100 units of insulin, you know, but they only should have gotten 1 unit. It's like, where's the communication between doctors and nurses and doctors and doctors and doctors and insurance companies? I'm not going to go into that.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's a big issue. That'll be for another time. But wow, just tell your people not to go to Mexico for cheaper surgery. Stay in New Mexico. Stay in California, please. Please.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, about your first book, My Surgical Cases Told in Poems, you did your training in New Mexico and wrote some of the cases as well too. Maybe just a bit of excerpt from your book as well too, along with an excerpt from Eyes of a Doctor and also Young Neurosurgeon as well too, just to get an idea of what your books are all about, what people can learn from them.
Sure. Let me read you something from My Surgical Cases Told in Poems. How about that?
That would work.
And the title of this, I don't know if you speak Spanish. I'm sure a lot of your audience members do. It's called La Cabeza Fea. It means the kind of the ugly head, the ugly face. So this is how it goes. Little Christina was born 4 months to the date.
Okay. Well, I think we're having some technical issues with Dr. Paul Kaloostian, LA neurosurgeon and author here on the Mike Wagner Show. Are you still with us? Are you still with us? Okay, I think we're being frozen here. So, are you still with us, Dr. Paul? Are you still with us?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Okay, yeah, I think we had a technical glitch, and I'm sure it's not the spirits are coming in to interfere. So go ahead and continue. We'd love to hear what you got.
Sure. Let me start from the beginning. Little Christina was 4 months to the date, growing so quickly, unwrapping her fate, eating so well, moving with such strength, pooping with a force that it tests a parent's faith. Parents are worried about their sweet Christina. Doctor, ¿por qué ella tiene la cabeza fea? Her head shape is abnormal, very long and narrow. Señora, vamos a ayudar con todo. So that's the beginning part of this. Essentially, it's about a young child that was born with a problem called craniosynostosis, which is kind of a congenital abnormality where the bones of the skull are fused, and they shouldn't be, right? Because the skull needs to grow and expand as our brain grows. But in these patients, unfortunately, sometimes they have a fused skull and they don't look normal. You know, in this particular case, the child had a long kind of boat-shaped head, and it's scary, you know, if you can imagine being a parent and seeing that. And anyway, I talk about how I ended up, you know, fixing that and helping them. So that's quite an interesting case, and really, you know, really a fascinating case, I think, for me, as well as I think for your readers, I hope.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think you're going to do a little excerpt from Young Neurosurgeon as well, too. Memoir and details of various situations, lessons learned, and everything else is basically like, yeah, lessons from patients and also from the eyes of a doctor as well, too.
Yeah. So an excerpt from the eyes of a doctor would include the following. The title of it is called "My Patients, My Heroes," and this is how it goes. Kept without food. NPO is what they call it. Kept awake all night. Vital signs we need it. The rooms are cold. The food somewhat bland. The hospital is rough. Nobody is a fan. They are woken up every hour. Their blood is taken, stored, and flowered. They experience pain, nausea, and frustration. They beg the doctor, relieve my constipation. So that's just the beginning portion of this poem where, as you can imagine, if you've been in a hospital, I have, I know many others have, you know it's cold. The rooms are not most comfortable. The food isn't the greatest. I'll just let you know that, Mike. Food isn't the greatest. And, you know, being a patient there, we have to take your vital signs. So we have to wake you up every hour. And on top of that, we have to take some of your blood.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it kind of seems archaic, you know, taking people's blood all the time and keeping them in a cold room. But you know what? This is what patients go through, and also keeping them without food. Well, if we're going to do surgery on them, they can't have food for 8 hours before the surgery. So we literally have to starve you to get you through surgery. You know, so it's tough what patients go through.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And of course, your last book as well, too. And, you know, just an excerpt on that. And where can people find your books? I mean, your books are very fascinating. I got to say that.
Well, thanks, Mike. And yeah, this would be a excerpt from the Young Neurosurgeon, Lessons from My Patients. One cold winter night in December, I received a call at home that a patient had been brought into the ER with acute onset of paraplegia, which is weakness of the legs. They're paralyzed in the legs. The junior resident in the ER told me that the patient was Mr. Chi, a 34-year-old Navajo living on a reservation land in New Mexico with his wife and 3 kids. He apparently had noticed weakness and numbness of his legs for the last 2 months. He had started using a hand-me-down wheelchair given to him by his uncle to get around. During this time, he had not seen a doctor. He continued to work while in a wheelchair. I admired his work ethic, which reminded me of my own family. Now Mr. Chi's family had driven him almost 100 miles to see a doctor in the middle of the night. And so that's a paragraph out of that chapter called the hand-me-down wheelchair. That was really a fascinating case.
Mm-hmm. Those are very fascinating cases and very fascinating stories. And where can we find your books at, Dr. Paul?
Sure. Yeah, they're all found on Amazon. You can go to my personal website, Kaloostian.com or drpaulwriting.com, and click on links on my website as well to get the books.
That is very fascinating. Once again, LA neurosurgeon and author Paul Kaloostian here on the Mike Wagner Show. And Dr. Paul, just a couple of things here. What can we expect from you in 2021 and beyond in terms of books?
In terms of books, I'm working on a set of short stories and poems regarding patients with traumatic brain injuries. We see all sorts of different unique outcomes of patients with traumatic brain injuries. You'd be surprised. And so I'm writing about that. I think in terms of books, that's it for now.
That is very fascinating. Looking forward to your new book as well, too. Love to have you back on soon, talk about that. And lastly, what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
At this point, I would recommend that that people should be okay with failure. Failure is good, and it'll make you a better person.
Mm-hmm. And that's a very good point. Once again, LA neurosurgeon and author Dr. Paul Kaloostian here on the Mike Wagner Show. Dr. Paul, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot from me. Looking forward to having you on very soon. And once again, tell us about your upcoming projects. What's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people come in to see you for any problems or any help?
You can find me in my offices in Pasadena and Riverside. You can check out my website, paulkaloostian.com or drpaulwriting.com. Just Google me, look me up. Happy to help out in any way I can.
We certainly will. Once again, Dr. Paul, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely great. Looking forward to having you again soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. Love you back on in 2021 and beyond. And don't forget to keep in touch. You've been absolutely terrific.
Let's do it again. Thanks, Mike.